My wife lied about treating Ebola patients while secretly with 4 men and got pregnant, even spending $8,000 from our kids' college fund to pay for a lover's club. In my experience, welcome home banners are just the prelude to disaster. I should have known something was wrong when Tisa insisted on hanging one on our front porch like some wannabe suburban Martha Stewart. My wife, Dr. Tisa, an infectious disease specialist, apparently an expert in bringing home more than just medical knowledge from her 3-month humanitarian mission in West Africa. I am Nikile, 41 years old, a former Marine turned hospital IT security chief. I fix computers, monitor security cameras, and occasionally chase idiots who think stealing medical equipment is a brilliant career choice. It is an honest job that pays the bills and keeps me close enough to Riverside General to have lunch with my wife between her saving lives and me preventing digital catastrophes. Or at least that is how things used to be. The banner waved in the October wind as I pulled into our driveway. My arms were heavy with groceries for Tisa's welcome home dinner. Mad, our 15-year-old daughter, had inherited her mother's sharp tongue and my suspicious nature. She was standing in the doorway with her arms crossed. Dad, Mom looks awful. Seriously, really bad. She just spent 3 months in rural Guinea treating Ebola patients. Honey, give her a break. Will, our 13-year-old son, appeared behind his sister, clinging to his Nintendo Switch as if it were a life raft. She has been throwing up all morning and will not stop looking at her phone every 5 seconds. Kids notice everything. It is a blessing and a curse at the same time. I found Tisa in our bedroom, sitting on the edge of our king-size bed with her head in her hands. Even sick, she was beautiful. Reddish-brown hair pulled back in a messy bun, green eyes that could stop traffic, and the kind of smile that had convinced me to propose after 6 months of dating. Today, however, she looked like she had been run over by a medical textbook. Hey, gorgeous. Tough flight. She looked up, and for a second I saw something in her eyes I had never seen before. Fear, guilt. Before I could process it, she was in my arms, sobbing against my chest. Nick, I need to tell you something. I think I might have been exposed to something in Guinea. I have symptoms. A chill ran down my spine. Ebola, Marburg, a dozen other hemorrhagic fevers that could kill you in days. What kind of symptoms? Fever, nausea, fatigue. And she pulled away, unable to look me in the eye, and some other things. I need to go to the hospital tonight. I pulled all my strings to get Tisa seen immediately at Riverside General. Dr. Patricia Hendricks, head of emergency medicine and one of Tisa's closest colleagues, took charge personally. Within an hour, Tisa was in isolation while they ran a battery of tests. Nick, try not to panic, Dr. Hendricks said, finding me pacing in the family waiting room. Her symptoms could be anything: stress, exhaustion, a simple virus. But doctors do not isolate patients for simple viruses. I spent the night in that waiting room drinking horrible coffee and watching CNN repeat the same news. They stayed with my sister, probably wondering if their mother was going to die from some exotic African disease. At 6 in the morning, Dr. Hendricks found me again. Her expression was unreadable. Nick, we need to talk in private. She took me to a small consultation room that smelled of disinfectant and broken dreams. The kind of room where doctors deliver life-changing news. The good news is that Tisa does not have Ebola or any hemorrhagic fever. The bad news is more complicated. How complicated? She has chlamydia and gonorrhea. The words hit me like a punch. For a moment I could not process what she had said. Then, reality crashed down like a crumbling building. That is impossible. We have been faithful. I have been faithful. Dr. Hendricks' expression was professionally sympathetic. Nick, I am sorry. The tests are definitive. These infections were transmitted through intimate contact. My wife of 16 years, the mother of my children, had cheated on me while supposedly saving lives in Africa. She had been busy destroying our marriage. How long has she had them? Based on the progression, I would say she was infected in the last 2 or 3 months. Right when she left for Guinea, or maybe after she got there. Hell, maybe she never even made it to Guinea. I sat in that sterile room for 20 minutes, staring at the motivational poster on the wall. Every day is a new beginning. What a load of crap. When I finally stood up, I felt different, older, angrier, as if someone had reached into my chest and rearranged my organs. I needed answers, and I knew exactly who to call. Mason Gry looked exactly like what he was, an ex-cop turned private investigator who had seen too much and drank too little coffee to care about social niceties. His office, above Murphy's Tavern, smelled of cigarettes and disappointment, but he had a reputation for finding the truth in places most people were afraid to look. So your wife brought back more than just malaria medication from her African adventure, Mason said, lighting his 4th cigarette since I started talking. You want me to find out who, what, when, and where? I want to know everything, every detail, every lie. That is going to cost you. The truth usually does. I slid an envelope across his desk. Here is 5,000. Find me the truth, and there will be another 5,000. Mason opened the envelope, counted the bills, and smiled. Nick, my friend, you just bought yourself a front row seat to this circus of underscore. While Mason began his investigation, I had to figure out how to handle things at home. Tisa was being treated with antibiotics and would be discharged in a few days. The kids thought she had an exotic, but treatable, African virus. I let them keep thinking that. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal. I went to work, monitored the security cameras, and fixed network issues while my marriage imploded in slow motion. My colleagues at the hospital treated me with the careful sympathy reserved for patients' families, not knowing that I was actually the victim of a completely different kind of infection. 3 days later, Mason called. Nit, you need to come to my office, and you might want to bring a bottle of something strong. I found Mason surrounded by photographs, computer printouts, and what looked like surveillance equipment. His expression was grim. Your wife never made it to Guinea. What do you mean? I mean Dr. Tisa Lu spent exactly 0 days treating Ebola patients in West Africa. She spent 3 months in Portland, Oregon, shacked up with Dr. Ongrant from the cardiology department. Grant, I knew him. Arrogant, Handsome, married with 2 kids. The kind of doctor who wore expensive suits and drove a BMW, as if it were a medical device. How do you know? Mason slid a stack of photographs across his desk. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, and photos that turned my stomach. Tisa and Oven in restaurants holding hands over candlelit tables. Tisa and Oven entering hotel rooms. Tisa and Oben doing things that were definitely not covered by their medical licenses. There is more, Mason said. Your wife was not just having an affair. She was part of something bigger. He showed me printouts of text messages, social media posts, and financial records. Tisa had been involved with a group of medical professionals who organized what they called continuing education retreats. In reality, they were elaborate cheating parties for doctors, nurses, and other hospital staff. It was all organized by Dr. Alexis Bas from psychiatry. She has been organizing these parties for 2 years, targeting married professionals looking for thrills. Your wife was recruited a few months ago. Dr. Alexis Bas, I knew her too. A blonde with the kind of predatory smile that made smart men do stupid things. She specialized in couples therapy and had a private practice that catered to Riverside's medical elite. So Tisa did not just cheat on me. She joined a cheaters club. It gets better or worse depending on your perspective. The group keeps detailed records, photos, videos, financial agreements, insurance, so to speak. Mason handed me a USB drive. It is all there. Names, dates, places, financial records. Your wife has been paying membership fees and participating in what they call professional development activities for months. I looked at the USB drive as if it were a venomous snake. How many people are involved? 43 medical professionals from 5 different hospitals, including some names that would be front-page news if this got out. I pocketed the drive and stood up. Mason, you have earned your bonus. What are you going to do? I'm going to diagnose the problem and prescribe the appropriate treatment. That night I sat in the home office while Tisa slept upstairs, recovering from the antibiotics, and the kids watched Netflix in the living room. I opened the USB drive and started reading. What I found made my skin crawl. Tisa had not only been unfaithful, she had been documenting it. Photos of hotel rooms, screenshots of text conversations with other participants, financial records showing she had spent over $8,000 of our money on her continuing education. But the worst part was reading her messages to Oven and the others. She wrote about me as if I were a boring obstacle to her supposed freedom. Nick is so predictable, she had written. Military men are all the same. No imagination, no imagination. We would see about that. I spent the next 2 hours creating a complete dossier. Names, faces, positions at various hospitals, financial records, and enough photographic evidence to destroy careers and marriages throughout the medical community. Then I started making calls. Julia Grant answered on the 3rd ring. I had met Oven's wife at hospital social events. Quiet, intelligent, the kind of woman who notices everything but says little. Perfect for what I had in mind. Julia, it is Nike Lay, Tisa's husband. I need to talk to you about something important, something about our spouses. Silence. Then I was wondering when you would call. We met at Riverside Park. The next morning, Julia brought coffee and a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. She looked tired, but determined, like someone who has been preparing for war. How long have you known? I asked. 6 months. Oben got careless with his phone passwords. She opened her folder and showed me printouts that made Mason's investigation look amateurish. I have been documenting everything. Julia had bank statements showing Oven's payments to Dr. Boss's consulting firm, hotel receipts, credit card statements, and photographs that would have made a divorce lawyer weep with joy. Why did not you confront him? Because I wanted to understand the scope of the problem first, and because I hoped it would burn itself out. She took a sip of coffee and looked across the park. I was wrong. We spent 2 hours comparing notes and building a complete picture of what our spouses had been doing. The continuing education retreats were elaborate events held at expensive resorts. Participants paid membership fees, attended workshops on relationship improvement, and participated in what the organizers called professional networking. It is not just about closeness, Julia explained. It is about power. These people are turned on by the secrecy, the risk, the feeling that they are part of something exclusive. How many people know about this? More than you think. Hospital gossip travels fast, especially when it involves misbehaving doctors. Half the nursing staff knows something is going on. That gave me an idea. Julia, what would you think about making this public? You mean exposing them? I mean destroying them professionally, socially, and financially. Making sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people they really are. Julia smiled for the first time since I had known her. Nick, I think we are going to be great friends. Over the next week we developed a plan that would have impressed military strategists. Julia handled the financial investigation, tracking the money and documenting the expenses. I used my hospital access to gather information on the participants' professional activities and potential ethical violations. Meanwhile, Tisa came home and tried to pretend nothing had changed. She told the kids elaborate stories about her time in Africa with fake photos she had downloaded from medical charity websites. She cooked my favorite dishes, bought me expensive gifts, and tried to initiate intimacy as if we were still a happy couple. I played along. I smiled, thanked her, and acted like the devoted husband she had betrayed. But inside I was planning her destruction with the methodical precision I had learned in the Marines. The breakthrough came when Julia discovered that Dr. Bas had been blackmailing some of the participants. The insurance photos and videos were not just for fun, they were leverage. Bas had been extorting money from married participants who wanted to leave the group or threatened to expose the operation. She has been bleeding them financially, Julia said, showing me financial records during one of our coffee meetings. Some people have paid her over $50,000 to keep quiet, including Tisa, especially Tisa. Your wife has been paying her over $2,000 a month for the last 4 months. $8,000 of our money gone. Money we had been saving for the kids' college, for our retirement, for the life we had been building together for 16 years. That night I made a decision. It was time to start the war. I started with the hospital administration. A doctor, Richard Harwell, chief of staff, was an administrator who took ethical violations very seriously. I requested a private meeting and presented him with a carefully edited version of my evidence. Dr. Harwell, I have discovered what I believe to be a serious violation of professional ethics involving several staff members. I showed him financial records, photographs, and documentation of the continuing education scam. I was careful to present it as a concerned employee reporting potential misconduct, not as a betrayed husband seeking revenge. Dr. Harwell's face changed color several times as he reviewed the evidence. Mr. Lay, this is extremely serious. If these allegations are true, we are looking at potential licensing violations, ethical misconduct, and possible criminal activity. I thought you should know before it becomes public knowledge. Public knowledge? Doctor, this involves over 40 medical professionals from multiple hospitals. The story is going to come out sooner or later. The question is whether Riverside General gets ahead of it or gets buried by it. Within 24 hours, the hospital had launched an internal investigation. Within 48 hours, the news had leaked to the nursing staff, administrative assistants, and maintenance crews. Hospital gossip networks make the CIA look like an amateur game. By Friday, everyone at Riverside General knew that some of their doctors had been caught in a cheating scandal. They did not know all the details yet, but they knew enough to start whispering in break rooms and elevators. Tisa came home that night looking shocked. Nick, there are rumors flying around the hospital. Crazy rumors about some kind of investigation. What kind of rumors? Something about doctors involved in inappropriate activities. Professional misconduct. The administration is not saying much, but people are talking. I looked up from my newspaper with practiced innocence. Sounds like typical hospital drama. You know how people gossip. But what if it affects me? What if people think I am involved somehow? Honey, you have been in Africa for 3 months treating Ebola patients. How could you be involved in hospital gossip? She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes. She was starting to realize that her carefully constructed lies were about to crumble. Nick, we need to talk about. What? About us, about our marriage, about some things I need to tell you. I folded my newspaper and gave her my full attention. I am listening. But before she could speak, my phone buzzed with a message from Julia. Oban has been suspended pending the investigation. It is starting. I smiled at my wife. I am sorry, honey. What were you saying? The annual Riverside General Hospital Gala was scheduled for the following Saturday. 500 members of the city's medical elite would gather at the Riverside Convention Center to celebrate another year of healing, innovation, and professional excellence. Under normal circumstances, Tisa and I would have attended together, smiled for photos, and chatted about medical breakthroughs and hospital politics. These were not normal circumstances. I do not think we should go, Tisa said, pacing our bedroom while I adjusted my tie. With all the rumors and the investigation, it might be better to keep a low profile. Nonsense. You are one of the most respected doctors at the hospital. Hiding would only make people think you have something to be ashamed of. The truth was, I wanted her there. I wanted them all there. Because that night was going to be the night everything came out. Julia and I had spent the week preparing. We had carefully leaked selected information to key members of the hospital staff, ensuring that the rumors would be flying by the time the gala started. We had also prepared a special presentation that would be hard to ignore. The convention center was decorated in Riverside General's colors, blue and silver streamers, elegant table settings, and a stage where Dr. Harwell would deliver his annual speech. I saw OG immediately. He looked nervous, constantly checking his phone and avoiding eye contact with other attendees. Dr. Alexis BAS was harder to find, but I finally saw her at the bar surrounded by a small group of participants from her continuing education program. They were huddled together like conspirators, which I guess they were. Nick, Dr. Patricia Hendricks approached with a warm smile. I'm glad to see you here. How is Tisa adjusting to being back? She is doing well. Still recovering from her African adventure. Dr. Hendricks' smile faltered slightly. Yes, well, I'm sure the transition has been an interesting challenge. The news was spreading faster than I had anticipated. I made my way through the crowd, greeting and chatting while keeping an eye on the key players. Tisa was across the room talking animatedly to a group of nurses who looked clearly uncomfortable. Oven was still alone, nursing what looked like his 4th drink of the night. At 8, Dr. Harwell took the stage to deliver his annual speech. He spoke of medical excellence, professional integrity, and the importance of maintaining public trust in healthcare institutions. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a scalpel. This year has brought challenges and opportunities, Dr. Harwell said, his voice echoing through the crowded ballroom. We have been reminded that our profession demands the highest standards of ethical conduct, both in our medical practice and in our personal lives. A murmur went through the audience. Everyone knew something was coming. That is why I am announcing tonight that Riverside General will be implementing new policies regarding professional conduct and continuing education programs. We will be reviewing all external educational activities to ensure they meet our standards of professional development. The murmurs grew louder. At a table near the front, I saw Dr. BAS turn pale, but Dr. Harwell was not finished. We will also be conducting a thorough review of any staff member who may have participated in activities that compromise their professional integrity or violate our code of ethics. Now the murmurs turned into real conversations. People were looking around the room, trying to identify who might be involved in the brewing scandal. That is when I made my move. I stood up and walked to the microphone that had been set up for public questions. Dr. Harwell looked surprised, but he motioned for me to proceed. Thank you, Dr. Harwell. I am Nike Lay from IT Security. I have a question about the professional conduct review you mentioned. Yes, mister. I am wondering if this review will include staff members who have been participating in what they call continuing education retreats, which are actually elaborate cheating parties funded by membership fees and organized by Dr. Alexis BAS. The silence that followed was deafening. 500 people stopped breathing. Simultaneously, Dr. Harwell's face went through several shades. Mr. Lee, this is not the appropriate forum for. Actually, doctor, I think it is the perfect forum because I have documentation showing that over 40 staff members from multiple hospitals have been participating in these activities, including financial records, photographs, and evidence of blackmail. The room erupted. People stood up shouting questions, pulling out their phones to record what was happening. I saw Tisa across the room, her face white with shock and horror. Furthermore, I continued, my voice rising above the chaos. I have proof that some participants, including my own wife, Dr. Tisa, have been lying about their professional activities. The doctor claimed to be treating Ebola patients in West Africa, when in fact, she was participating in these cheating parties in Portland, Oregon. That is when Oven Grant lost it. He pushed his way through the crowd toward the stage, his face red with anger and alcohol. Son of a__, you have no right to. I have every right, I said, stepping down from the microphone to meet him. I have the right to expose liars, cheaters, and blackmailers. I have the right to protect my children from parents who think marriage vows are just suggestions. Oven threw a punch at me. I was expecting it. I dodged his clumsy swing and grabbed his wrist, using his own momentum to spin him around and pin his arm behind his back. 16 years of marriage had not made me forget my military training. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced to the shocked crowd of onlookers, I present to you Dr. Oven Grant, cardiologist and home wrecker. He has been having an affair with my wife for the last 4 months while his own wife was taking care of their children. I released Owen, who stumbled and nearly fell. He looked around at the hundreds of people staring at him with a mixture of disgust and fascination. This is crazy, he stammered. Are you crazy? Tisa, tell them this is crazy. But Tisa was already gone. I saw her pushing her way through the crowd toward the exit, desperate to escape the humiliation. Dr. Bas tried to follow her, but Julia Grant stood in her way. Dr. Ba, Julia said, her voice ringing out clearly in the room. I believe you have something that belongs to my husband and me, something worth about $50,000. The crowd was loving this. Medical professionals love drama as much as anyone, especially when it involves colleagues they have always suspected of being corrupt. Security guards were moving toward the stage, but Dr. Harvell waved them off. He returned to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it is best that we conclude this evening's festivities. Thank you for your attendance, and please drive safely. As people began to leave, I found myself surrounded by hospital staff asking questions, offering support, and sharing their own suspicions about the participants in Dr. Basic's program. Dr. Patricia Hendricks said, pulling me aside. I had no idea about any of this. About Tisa, about the affairs, about the lies. Most people did not. That was the point. What are you going to do now? I looked around the emptying ballroom, at the shocked faces and whispered conversations that would fuel hospital gossip for the next few months. Now I am going to finish what I started. The story hit social media before I got home from the gala. Someone had recorded my speech and Oven's outburst, and within hours the hashtag Riverside Scandal was trending locally. By Sunday morning the local news was calling it Medgate and running stories about corruption in the city's medical community. I found Tisa sitting at our kitchen table, still in her gala dress, staring at her phone with tears streaming down her face. Nick, please, we need to talk about this rationally. Rationally? You want to talk about rational behavior? I poured myself a coffee and sat down across from her. Let us start with the rational decision to lie about treating Ebola patients while you were sleeping with your colleague in hotel rooms in Portland. It was not supposed to happen like this. It was just going to be a break, a chance to clear my head. Clear what, Tisa? Like spending $8,000 of our kids' college money on membership fees for a cheaters club? She looked genuinely surprised. How do you know about the money? I know everything. The payments to Alexis Bas, the blackmail, the photographs, the videos, everything. I slid a manila folder across the table. Your boyfriend Oven has been suspended pending an investigation. Dr. Bas is facing criminal charges for extortion, and you are about to lose your medical license for ethical violations. Tisa opened the folder and saw copies of all the evidence I had gathered. Financial records, photographs, text messages, hotel receipts, her entire secret life laid bare in black and white. You hired a private investigator. I hired a professional to find the truth. Something you seem to have forgotten how to do. Nick, I know you are angry, but think about the children. Think about our family. I am thinking about the children. I am thinking about how they deserve better than a mother who lies to their face about saving African children while she is actually destroying her own family. That is when Motto at the kitchen door still in her pajamas. Dad, Mom, what is going on? Why are there news vans outside? Tisa and I looked at each other in all our mutual destruction planning. Somehow we had forgotten that our children would be caught in the crossfire. Sit down, honey, I said. We need to explain a few things. The next hour was the hardest of my life. Explaining to your 15-year-old daughter and your 13-year-old son that their mother had been living a lie for months, that their parents' marriage was over, and that their family was about to become local news. It was not covered in any parenting manual I had read. Mad took it better than well. She had inherited enough of my suspicious nature to have sensed that something was wrong. Will just stood there clutching his Nintendo Switch, trying to process information that would have challenged adults. So, did not Mom really help sick people in Africa? Will asked. No, buddy, she did not. And are you and Mom getting a divorce? Yes, and everyone is going to find out because it is in the news. Probably. Will nodded slowly. This sucks. Yes, it really does. Tisa tried to explain herself, to justify her actions, to minimize the damage. But the kids were not stupid. They understood the betrayal, even if they did not understand the adult complications that had led to it. By Monday morning, the story had exploded beyond the local news. Medical ethics scandals involving cheating parties and blackmail were apparently irresistible to the national media. CNN ran a segment on professional misconduct in healthcare. Fox News called it medical malpractice of the heart. The hospital was getting calls from reporters from all over the country. I took a week off from work to deal with lawyers, reporters, and the general chaos that comes with accidentally becoming the center of a national news story. My phone rang constantly with interview requests, offers to write a book, and calls from other betrayed spouses who wanted advice on exposing their cheating partners. The legal proceedings moved faster than I expected. Tisa hired an expensive divorce lawyer who specialized in high-profile cases, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. Julia and I had documented everything so thoroughly that there was no room for denial or negotiation. Mr. Lay, my lawyer Lisa Chan explained to me, during one of our meetings, your wife's legal team is trying to argue that the evidence was obtained illegally. They are claiming invasion of privacy. Everything we found was either public domain or provided by willing participants. Nothing was hacked, stolen, or obtained through illegal surveillance. That is what I told them. They are also trying to argue that exposing the affair publicly constitutes emotional distress and defamation. She defamed herself by lying about treating Ebola patients. I just provided photographic evidence that she was lying. The custody battle was more complicated. Tisa's lawyers argued that, despite her personal failings, she was still a competent mother who deserved shared custody. My lawyers argued that someone who could lie to her children's face for months about her professional activities was not trustworthy with their emotional well-being. The kids made the decision easier by refusing to stay at Tisa's apartment. Matt was old enough to choose where she wanted to live and Will followed his sister's lead. They were angry, hurt, and felt betrayed by their mother's lies. I do not want to see her, Madeira from the family court told him. She lied to us about everything. How do we know she will not lie about other things? Meanwhile, the professional consequences were piling up. Dr. Bas was arrested on extortion charges. Oven Grant was fired from his position and was facing medical board hearings that would likely end his career. Tisa was suspended pending an investigation and was facing similar professional consequences. The continuing education scandal had exposed corruption in multiple hospitals. Medical boards across the state were reviewing the licenses of everyone involved. Several participants had already resigned rather than face disciplinary action, but it was not over yet. 3 months after the gala, I was in my lawyer's office reviewing the final divorce settlement when Lisa Chan handed me an envelope that had been delivered by a courier. It is from Tisa's lawyer. She wants to meet with you in private. For what? She did not say, but I suspect she is going to try one last manipulation to salvage something from this mess. I found Tisa waiting at Riverita Park, the same place where Julia and I had first planned our mutual destruction campaign. She looked terrible, thin, pale, and dressed in clothes that suggested her financial situation had deteriorated significantly. Nick, thank you for coming. What do you want, Tisa? I want to apologize. Really apologize. It is not just lawyer talk. I want you to know that I understand what I did to you, to the children, to our family. Okay, you are sorry. Is that all? I am also scared. The medical board is going to revoke my license. I will never practice medicine again. I have lost everything. My career, my family, my reputation. I have nothing left. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or deception, but she just looked broken. You made your choices, Tisa. Actions have consequences. I know, but I need you to know that I never wanted it to go this far. It started as a simple thrill, something different. Alexis made it seem sophisticated, like we were exploring personal growth. Personal growth through adultery and lying to your children? I know how it sounds, I know how it looks, but I was drowning, Nick. I felt trapped in our routine, in our life. I felt invisible. So you decided to make yourself visible by joining a cheaters club and lying about treating dying children in Africa. She winced. When you put it like that, it sounds monstrous. It was monstrous. We sat in silence for several minutes, watching the runners and dog walkers enjoy the spring afternoon. Normal people living normal lives without scandals or betrayals. What happens now? She asked. Now you live with the consequences of your choices. You find a new career, maybe in a different city where people do not know your story. You try to rebuild some kind of relationship with your children if they will let you, and you learn to live with the fact that you destroyed a 16-year marriage for a few months of excitement. And you? What happens to you? I thought about that question. What had happened to me now? The revenge was complete. Tisa had lost her career, her reputation, and her family. Oven Grant was facing similar consequences. Dr. Bas was facing criminal charges. Everyone involved in the scandal had been exposed and punished. But revenge, I was discovering, was like surgery. It could remove the diseased tissue, but it could not heal the underlying wound. I'm going to focus on raising our children and helping them understand that their mother's choices do not define them. I'm going to continue with my career and maybe write a book about this whole experience. And eventually I will try to find someone who understands that marriage vows actually mean something. Tisa started to cry. I loved you, Nick. I really did. Maybe you did, but love without respect, without honesty, without commitment is not really love. It is just convenience with added emotions. I stood up to leave, then turned back. Tisa, I want you to know that I do not hate you. I am not even angry anymore. I am just disappointed. You had it all. A career you loved, children who adored you, a husband who would have done anything for you, and you threw it all away for something that was not even real. It seemed real at the time. That is the problem. You confused feeling with reality. You confused excitement with happiness. You confused secrecy with sophistication, and now you have to live with the reality of those confusions. I walked away from her, as she sat alone on that park bench crying over the wreckage of a life she had destroyed with her own decisions. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks later. I got the house, primary custody of the children, and most of our assets. Tisa got a small settlement and supervised visitation rights that she rarely exercised. 6 months after the gala, I was helping Mad with her college applications when she asked the question I had been dreading. Dad, do you think Mom will ever be normal again? I do not know, honey. I hope so. I hope she learns from this and finds a way to be happy without hurting other people. Do you think you will get married again? Maybe someday, but not until I am sure I can trust someone completely. And not until you and Will are ready for that kind of change in our family. What if we are never ready? I laughed. Then I guess I will just be a very dedicated single dad. Will looked up from his video game. Dad, Would you ever lie to us like Mom did? No, buddy, I promise I will never lie to you about anything important. If you ask me a question, you will get an honest answer. Even if it is not the answer you want to hear. Even if the truth sucks, especially if the truth sucks, because lies always make everything worse in the end. That night, after the kids were in bed, I sat in my office reviewing the final divorce documents. Everything was settled. The revenge was complete. Justice had been served such as it was. But as I looked around the house where we had raised our children, where we had celebrated birthdays and holidays, where we had built what I thought was a life together, I realized that revenge was an empty victory. I destroyed the people who had betrayed me, but I could not rebuild what they had taken from me. I could not restore the trust, the innocence, the belief that the people you love will always choose to protect rather than destroy what you have built together. The scandal had made me locally famous. Reporters still called from time to time asking for updates on the Medgate story. I had been invited to speak at conferences on workplace ethics and the importance of professional integrity. A publisher had offered me a book deal to tell my story in detail, but fame built on personal destruction felt empty. I had won the war, but I had lost something essential in the process. The ability to trust completely, to love without reservation, to believe that people are fundamentally good. Maybe that was the true cost of revenge, not just the destruction of your enemies, but the hardening of your own heart against future vulnerabilities. Or maybe that was just the price of growing up, of learning that the world is more complicated and cruel than you had wanted to believe. Either way, it was over. Tisa had moved to another state to start over. Hoving Grant had lost his medical license and was working as a pharmaceutical sales representative. Dr. Bas was serving 18 months in a federal prison for extortion and mail fraud. The kids were doing well in therapy, learning to process their anger and disappointment in healthy ways. Matt had been accepted to 3 universities and was planning to study journalism. Will had joined the robotics club at school and was talking about becoming an engineer. Life went on, as it always does, carrying the scars, but not the open wounds of betrayal and revenge. I closed the folder containing the last legal documents and put it away in my desk drawer. Then I went upstairs to check on my children, the 2 people in the world who mattered more than any marriage, any career, any revenge. They were both sleeping safely in their beds, dreaming of futures that would not be defined by their parents' failures. That was enough.